When you hit pause on a machine, it stops working. But when you hit pause on a human brain, it starts working.
Hey, Millionaire University Nation. Welcome to the Millionaire University Podcast. I am your host, Brian Gearin, back with you today, and I am thrilled to introduce our guest, Matt Drinkhahn. He is the host of the Eternal Optimist Podcast, and he is a top-level executive coach at ProAdvisor Coach. Today, he is going to share one of my new favorite topics, my new favorite concepts in business, but more so in mindset. So without going into too much detail here in this intro, let's just jump right in and welcome Matt to the Millionaire University Podcast. Let's go. We're going to talk about thinking time today. So, Matt, where are we headed with this?
I started off by thinking about Millionaire University. It just sounds like an exciting podcast that if I go listen to the podcast, it may help me to become a millionaire. It may help me to learn from people who have successfully reached that status or reached that place in their career. And I was thinking to myself, how did I become a millionaire? What are the things that actually helped me to get to this place where we've grown a business and we've saved resources and accumulated? How did we get there? And I started by asking myself a reverse question of how many of us out there are running at the speed of, oh crap, that we don't ever take time to slow down and actually stop and think or stop and strategize. As entrepreneurs, we do it every single day. We're always constantly pivoting, making decisions, and it flows naturally. And how many times we actually stop and hit pause on the brain and direct it towards something that can sustain us and help us grow exponentially. And that's why the thought for today came up for the audience is how I might be able to add that value to your team here, Brian, of what are the skills and the actual tactics, in the weeds tactics that can help your audience. If they're not there yet, then what's the first step that can help them get there? If they're already in a place where they have achieved some level of success, we'll say financially, then how do they continue to expand on that with new skills and keep growing it from there? Right? And of course, I guess the far extreme is what if they are so wealthy, then maybe today's tool can help them to learn how to distribute it or use that wealth in a way to help others in a bigger way. So, whoever's listening today, there's going to be something that you can use guaranteed, no matter where you're at. For those of you who do have the ability, grab a pen out, because there are some things here that if you were to implement them today, literally today, and it's that simple to do it. I'm not saying it's easy, it's simple. If you can use this today, then you can have massive success starting pretty much today. Right? Because this tactic, this habit, routine that I want to share with you is something that those who commit to it and do it consistently, they have success pretty quickly. You can start to see the shift happen. You framed it up here. It's called thinking time. And I want to give credit where credit's due, Brian. I didn't come up with that word, thinking time. I learned that wording or framework from Mr. Keith Cunningham. He wrote a very popular business book. It's on my Mount Rushmore of books. It's called The Road Less Stupid. And it's a book, I believe it has 57 chapters. They're all 3 to 6 pages each. And they're all business lessons from the chairman of the board, Keith Cunningham, who built, I believe, a $250 million business and then lost all of it in the market back in late 80s when the real estate collapsed and ended up millions in debt. He built a $250 million company. Just think about this. Built a $250 million company and then it was all lost. And then he went millions in debt and then had to rebuild from there and has since rebuilt something also quite massive and successful. And, who better to learn from than someone who's been there, right? And so I learned from him, and it has helped. If there's any habit that has helped me to reach this place of, we'll just call it, financial success or business success, if there's any consistent habit that has fueled me to keep learning, keep growing, and keep leveling up, then I would say this has been one of the most important ones, and it's called thinking time. All right, so let me lay it out for you here, team. So we'll go into workshop mode for 5 to 7 minutes here, and this is something that I would invite you to take notes on. So this idea of thinking time, which he outlines incredibly well in his book, The Road Less Stupid, Chapter 4, How to Do Thinking Time, the process. Basically what it is, it's real simple. It's making time, and the way I do it, is sit down for 20 minutes, maybe up to 45 minutes, once or twice a week, and simply write down a question of a problem I want to solve. It's that simple. Write down a question or problem I want to solve. Sit there with your journal, with your computer if you have to type it, and then write out whatever comes to your mind. All right? It's that simple. Matt, I thought you were going to give me some groundbreaking stuff here that's going to change my entire life. Are you telling me sit down and write in a journal? Kind of. Let's go into some of the details of how you might use this to your advantage. So you take this block of time. The only rules of thinking time are 3. Number 1 is it's got to be distraction-free. So to the best of our ability, we got to put away our cell phones, put away our laptops, so turn off the dings on our email coming at us. Do it, like for me personally, I've got to do it before the kids wake up in the morning, right? So find a time and a place where you can be distraction-free. So number 1 is distraction-free. Number 2 is once you write down the question, the problem you're going to solve, start writing and don't put the pen down. The conclusion of your allotted time. All right, so if it's 20 minutes, you just start writing and you don't stop until it's done. Now, here is what's going to happen if you're new to this. You're going to write down a question. So, for example, a question that I wrote down is, how might I continuously level up in my business and in my life so that I can be the best dad, husband, human business coach that I can be? I'll ask a question like that. How might I so I can? Question. So I'll write the question down and then just start writing the answer with the timer on the background. That's it. A lot of stuff comes out. And in about 3 to 5 minutes, a lot of people that do this for the first time are going to hit a wall, Brian. And when they hit the wall, they're going to think, that's it. I've answered the question. They think that they've succeeded. I've arrived. This is it. And in reality, that's not it. In reality, you've hit your first wall, and every single person that does this is going to hit a wall, and they're going to hit that wall in 3 to 7 minutes. When they hit the wall, the challenge I have for you, dear listener, is to push through that first level, because the first thing that you write down is what's on your conscious brain. That's the stuff that you already know. And that can be very valuable, because if we don't sit down and pause and think about it, it may be a little bit out of our reach, but when you sit down and think about it, you're going to have that out there pretty quick. But then what do you do after you're 3 to 7 minutes in and you hit the wall? That's when the creativity comes up. That is when you push through and you might ask yourself a different question. How might I do this? I've already thought through what I think. Maybe you go into really granular what you're actually going to do. Maybe you ask yourself, what would Brian Gearin do here? What would Matt Drinkhahn do here? What would this person that I look up to in business or in life do? What would my spouse do? Ask yourself from a slightly different lens. The point is, you've not reached your potential. You've not gotten all the creativity out. You don't have all of the ideas that are possible in the known universe in 3 to 7 minutes. All you've come up with is stuff you might already know. So you've already made a little bit of progress, but you can make so much more, right? You've got to push through that first barrier. And this is hard it's like the people meditate for the first time. They're like, what am I doing? I can't control my thoughts. They're coming at me 100 miles an hour. Yeah, well, this is the opposite. You're going to have these thoughts all come at you. You're going to write them all down. And in 3 to 7 minutes, you're going to feel like you've exhausted all the thoughts, or you're not sure where to go next. That's what you got to push through. And that's how, when you go back to the gym, if you haven't worked out in a while, you feel okay that first day, but the next morning when you wake up, you might be okay, but the second morning after you wake up, your body's, oh man, I'm so sore. I'm in pain. My arms hurt. Yeah, it's the worst. You'll try this the first time, and you may feel like you got some benefit from it, but you really will get the benefit a couple days later, a few sessions into it, a few sessions later, when you start to develop the habit of, this is how I can actually solve all of my challenges, is I can write about them and pause and think about them. So you have a challenge out there. Let's say I'm running at the speed of, oh crap, and I don't know how to go from this very reactive, overwhelmed space I'm in into a proactive, kind of a more in control of my schedule type place. So how might I go from overwhelmed and reactive to a more proactive and relaxed, peaceful inner self, so I can remove my stress, or so I can have a better lifestyle? That might be a thinking time question for some people. So step 1, right? And once you write the question down, step 1, turn that timer, make it distraction free. Step 2 is, once you hit that wall, keep going. You just can't stop writing. Okay? And then the third rule of thinking time is no judgment of yourself. Because you're going to have an idea, and Brian, you're going to think that idea, that's silly, that's not going to help me in any way, shape, or form. I'm not even going to write that down. Hold your judgment and write down anything free-flowing that comes to your mind, straight from your stream of consciousness. Because some of the best things, Some of the craziest things that don't matter at all, they may happen right now. That's true. Some of the best ideas may come out right now when you feel that that's just so simple. That's not going to help me at all. I have a client who's been doing thinking time now for a couple years, and they had a company that was a few $1,000,000 in revenue, and now that company, literally less than 3 years later, it's more than triple the size. Why is that? Why is that? How does that happen? It's not just because they sat down and thought about it. It is because they developed the type of systemic routine and thinking and planning that was able to get them out of being the bottleneck in their own business. Quick pulse check out there, audience. How many of you are entrepreneurs, leaders who are the bottleneck, who are trying to do it all yourself, who are always wondering, man, how can I grow and scale this? Because I'm always overwhelmed. I'm always doing everything myself. Maybe that's a great thinking time question to work on.
Yeah, hint, hint. If it's all of us entrepreneurs, at least currently or formerly, you were or are the bottleneck. And probably for the most part, we are currently the bottleneck. So that absolutely resonates. I love this concept. You may have mentioned it at the onset, but how often do you do thinking time? Is this like spontaneous? Do you have a scheduled like Wednesday from 9 to 9:45? It's thinking time and nothing else is happening? How do you literally physically go about it? Do you schedule it out or is it spontaneous?
A great question. For me, I schedule it out to this point where I've been doing it for less than a decade, more than 7 years, somewhere in that range. I've been doing this pretty consistently. And it's, for me now, I do it 3 times a week, at least 3 times a week. I do it Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday morning. I do it from 5:50 in the morning until about 5:50, somewhere in there for about 20 to 45 minutes. It's got to be before the kids get up, because once they get up, I don't want to be distracted in front of them digitally or writing in a journal. So I do it 3 times a week. I have a backup time in case I'm not able to get to it on Thursday, which is a hectic day for me after a late Wednesday, right? I'll do it on Friday. So either Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, or Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday. That's how I do it. Now, some people that I coach, they will do it once a week, and then they will send me a picture of their journal, and I'll send them a picture of my thinking time, and we do the same question together, which is why I would advise anyone out there who's trying this for the first time, don't judge yourself, just write down anything that comes to mind, because your stuff that you think is not that important, if you're sharing it with a teammate, sharing it with a partner, sharing it with a coach, it may be something that triggers an idea for them, and vice versa. So that's how I do it. A number of clients do it very similar. I'll give you an example that recently, I live in Charlotte, North Carolina. I traveled to San Antonio, Texas to facilitate simply a 45-minute thinking time for 70 professionals who are the top in their industry in financial services. And literally, that's all we did. They paid me to come in there and ask a question, put on some meditative music, and challenge everyone to think. This is how starved we are in our business culture right now, to actually take the time out to pause and think and do some real good strategy planning. These are the things that used to be the staples. Like Peter Drucker used to talk about strategic planning and thinking back when the Harvard Business Review, and he was the most quoted management leadership guru of all time back in the 60s and 70s and 80s. Now that seems to have gone by the wayside for all of these new gurus and people that are coming up saying, do this, do that. And this principle is still tried and true, Brian. It works for anyone who's willing to do it and commit to it and stick with it is going to find some value in this. So I'll pause for a second. What are you feeling right now? What is this bringing up for you, this idea of thinking time? You're an entrepreneur. I mean, do you do something like this now, or is this hard for you? Just talk about your experience here, because I know that you're running a big company. So talk about how this plans for you.
Yeah. So using myself as an example, my first thought is I do a ton of thinking time, but it is not organized at all. Like it's when I'm in the shower. It's when I'm driving down the road. It's when I'll be reading, like when I read Keith's book. Half the time he'll make a point and then I'll start thinking about it and relating it to my business. Now I need to remember I need to stay present so I can hear the rest of the chapter. But I find myself at so many times, probably way more than I would think is actually true, more times where I am thinking, but it is not structured in the way that thinking time, in the way you've presented it, the way that Keith presents it as well, is that's not what I have right now, is that structure. So starting today, I'm going to fix that. So, I'll say I started journaling at the beginning or middle of January. A mastermind coach of mine gifted me the 5-minute journal. And that started really changing things for me in my business, the way I structure my life. I'm very busy. I've got 3 kids going on 4. I've got a couple businesses, and obviously being a part of MU here, I'm a busy guy, but I was very disorganized. And honestly, I still am. There's still a lot of things I need to get better at being organized at, but journaling started really honing that in for me. And when we put things in writing, when I do this for clients, it really opens their eyes to be like, oh, okay, like now that hits home. A, I see it in writing, and B, I see whether it's a strategic plan or or how we're designing this next ad run or this campaign or this building a loyalty program, whatever it might be, that opens the doors for them. So it's, in my mind, why wouldn't I do that for myself and my business and for my life in general? Because it is all perfectly intertwined. As an entrepreneur, family, kids, life, social, business, it is all intertwined. And it's very difficult to keep them separate because they never will be separate perfectly, but I think thinking time is going to make a big difference in that.
I totally agree. And if you put all these things together, I've been positioning this as something that the entrepreneurs do, that business owners do. You could direct this towards any of these most important buckets in our life. As an example, I think about the most impactful thinking time questions that have ever come across my journal, and I'll share 3 of them with you right now in 3 different lenses. If you go back in time 4 years when this pandemic thing called COVID came to the United States, I remember there was a time, it was a Friday, maybe the March 19th, maybe the March 26th, somewhere in there in 2020, that here in North Carolina, we got this thing called the stay-at-home order, which means that now my wife cannot leave our house to go to work. She has to stay at home. And we have a full-time nanny that would come to the house every day and help with our children, and she could not come to our house anymore. So we all of a sudden had a big challenge. And I don't mean just like the challenge and the possible threat of loss of life due to COVID. That was a very real, something we're all very aware of. I'm talking about a business challenge to solve. And the challenge was we had some big goals in our company that year. We wanted to double the size of our company in 2020. And then when COVID happened, it threw a monkey wrench, or a perceived monkey wrench, in it, because now I've got all the kids at home, and at the time there were 3 of them, still are 3, and my wife's at home, and we don't have a nanny anymore, and we don't have a second room or a home office in there except for the one I'm in now. So we had to solve the problem. Here's the thinking time question that came up. How might I still double the size of our business this year in half the time so we can build momentum through what may seem to be a challenging year? So if you look at the question, how might we still double the size of our business in half the time? Here's where I get half the time. I was coaching Monday through Thursday from 8:30 in the morning until 5 o'clock. And now that my wife has got to be home and the kids have got to be home, something's got to give with the kids. And I don't go to my wife and say, hey, dear, by the way, our business is thriving, so I need you to stop working and do all the kids, or I need you to keep doing your job and manage all the kids. I go to work. That conversation doesn't go very well. So I didn't even think about trying to have that. I was like, yeah, negative on this one. So what we did is we decided to split the childcare duties, meaning that I would coach for 3 hours, and then I would take the children and be with them for 3 hours, and back and forth, my wife and I. So literally, the way I say half the time is I'm now working half the time, or have half the coaching time available that I had before. So I'm trying to double the size of our company, and I'm trying to do it in half the time. All right, so you think about that equation, and it's a very challenging equation. So I put that down on paper and started to write, and a number of things came out that I didn't pause to think about before. And to fast forward to the end of the year, we did successfully more than double the size of our company in 2020. So instead of seeing it as a detractor or a negative, we found a way to find the advantage or the opportunity in the most challenging moment that, frankly, I've seen in my business career when everything got shut down. So if you're looking to double the size of your company, how might you do that? Through your people, through your systems, through the way that you run your everyday practice. All right, how might you do that? Come up with some thinking time questions around that. That's one. A second thinking time question, if you want to apply this to let's just say your significant other in your life. A big surprise maybe here, but I may or may not be the perfect husband, right? Or the perfect human. I asked my wife for some feedback, and she said, Matt, I think you do a better job of listening. You're always hearing me, but I don't think that you're always listening and following through on it. So my thinking time question is, how might I show up today so that my wife says, Matt, you're a great listener? And I wrote that question down and during thinking time, and really started to game plan around how I can be a more of a quality time, better listener to Julie, my wife. And that has worked out incredibly well to pause and think about that. So that's question 2. Third question, team. Here's a third question towards your family, like your children, specifically if you have kids. How might I show up in such a way so that when my kids are adults, they say internally, I believe in myself, I love myself, and I know that Daddy loves me, right? Now that may or may not sound like the most exciting question to some people out there, but that's what's important to me. When I see success as a father with my kids, it's their inner dialogue is that they believe in themselves, they love themselves, and they know that I love them. And so that's my definition of success as a father, is get the kids to first survive and then have a strong inner narrative, right? So that's my thinking time question around that. So those are 3 examples of something that in our minds we might be thinking about and wrestling with as we're driving somewhere or watching a show or whatnot. When you take the time to pause, I heard from first guy who was ever on my podcast, the Eternal Optimist Podcast. His name is John Berghoff, leader of the exchange community. And when John has always shared that when you hit pause on a machine, it stops working. But when you hit pause on a human brain, it starts working. And that is what the power of thinking time can do for us, is to get us to pause on all this stuff going 100 miles an hour around us and hone in that focus into something that can help us to solve problems and make monumental progress just because we stopped long enough to think about it and to write it down. Okay, so team, if you're still with me, here's a hack or a star or a bonus. Everyone loves a bonus. Here is the bonus on the back end of the thinking time, is that when you're doing this and you're writing it down, you can share this with the people in your organization to help them grow and level up their skills as well, because they will model after what the leader does. So if you're doing this at home and your children see you do it, guess what? My kids are 8, 7, and 5 right now, and they journal in the mornings. Why? And by the way, I'm not trying to say that to brag about it, maybe a little bit of a brag about it, because they see me wrapping up thinking time when they come downstairs and they ask about it, right? Your clients might see you doing it and see that you're a real professional. This is the kind of person I want to be in business with. Your employees or teammates see you doing it, and they're like, the leader over there, that's how they're leveling up as they keep doing this practice. I wonder what might happen if I tried it. All it takes is a few times doing this before you get it, and I don't think you'll ever stop. Right? So those are some things that are side benefits to having other people see you do it, and how you can develop your team, your family, and all kinds of different extra tangents happen when you do this. You're not going to shortcut this by not writing and just thinking about it. I'll give you an example. Stephen Covey wrote the seminal classic, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And the first exercise in his book, I believe habit 1 is put first things first. Or I don't remember exactly what habit 1 is, but there's an exercise where he goes in there, the 4 quadrants of urgent, important, not important, whatnot. And this is one of those things that he asks you in his book to pause, stop whatever you're doing, and write out like your daily schedule and put things into the quadrants. How many people, when this author, Stephen Covey, challenges you in his book to pause and write things down, how many people actually stop and write things down and work on their game? I would bet the majority of them just sit there and think about it, and then they go to the next page. And guess how long that thought stays in their brain? About 5 more minutes, right? About 3 more days, 5 days from now, they don't remember any part of it. All right, so if you're not doing this and not writing it down, you're missing the point, and you're missing the part that will empower you to become a millionaire or raise that level of confidence, that level of maturity, that level of being able to work on and solve hard problems. You've not done that if all you do is just think about it in your brain. Very few people have the ability to simply just think about something and turn it straight into action and turn that straight into, millionaire. Right? Those who, if you're not there yet, this is something different. Try it by writing it down.
It's all about doing the dang thing, right? It's one thing to have a thought in the shower, to be a passing thought while you're driving. And it's another thing to actually put it on paper so that you have that thought into the reality, right? Like it's in your brain, but now it's on paper. Now it's reality. Now it's something. Now it's concrete. And it's something that you can go back and think on during thinking time. And now that you've built on that, you've thought it, you've wrote it, you thought on it again, Now it's possibly something you're going to physically take action on. And that's what I have found in my 7 years of entrepreneurship is once I stick to something, once I commit to it, then I start seeing the value from it. Now I never go back on it, which is why I'm so glad to have you here today, because Thinking Time, after finishing that book, I always try to go back through a book and kind of pick out the main things that I'm really going to try and focus on. And Thinking Time is definitely one of them now, for sure.
Absolutely. And I'm glad you brought it up. And I think that there's ample opportunity. The book you're talking about is this one, of course. It's The Eternal Optimist. It's never too late. It just came out on March 8th, so we're about a month in right now. I hit bestseller status on day one in a few hours when it got published, so it's pretty cool. That doesn't buy you much. It's just simply a cool thing to say. So maybe a little bit of ego there, but ultimately I had a person call me and they were crying. They said that they really connected with them. Just the idea, if you read this book, and you find in it that main character mirrors anything in you, right? You find that maybe sometimes you have noble intent, but the way it comes out is not exactly the way you intended, right? Or you're doing everything for your family, or so you think. It's really just for yourself. You don't realize that because it's a blind spot. And there's so many different lessons that you could take from in the book, and you can turn the lens on yourself and do a thinking time. So I'm glad you brought it up. I would invite all the listeners here. The Eternal Optimist is never too late. You can get it on Amazon, hard copy. You can get a soft copy. You can get it on Kindles. You can read it there. The audio version will come out in about a year, so we're not there yet, but you can get it every other way. I'd invite you to check it out, team, and it would mean the world to me if you would do that. Leave a rating and review, and then message me any questions. I'm open to any feedback. You could say this is a 5-star. You could say it's a 1-star book. I'm just hungry for stars. Just feed me some stars.
Matt's collecting stars, folks. And yes, please check out his book, The Eternal Optimist. Matt, I'm going to be buying my copy here shortly. And what's the best way to reach out to you? Is it email? Is it LinkedIn? How can folks get a hold of you if they so desire?
The last name, Drinkon. It's pretty unique. There's only, I think, 12 of us in the whole world, and I'm the only Matt. So just go to me on LinkedIn, Matt Drinkhahn, and you'll see my face and picture and the Eternal Optimist Podcast, the logo, and love to connect with you on LinkedIn. Be a good way to start.
All right, perfect, Matt. And the way you ended your podcast, I love that you asked, what does being an eternal optimist mean to you? So I want to pose a question to you to wrap up our show here on MU. What is the impact that you think this made? If you never were introduced to Thinking Time, what's that impact you think it has had that may not have happened if you were never introduced to Thinking Time?
Thinking Time has helped me to solve for the number one challenge I feel most entrepreneurs face. And that is something I would call the perfection trap. And it's something called a state of constant overwhelm. All right, so if you ever find yourself overwhelmed and you're just drinking from the fire hose and it keeps getting bigger and bigger and you can't get it to stop, and you have this inner part that's always stressed, it's always in a stressful, in duress condition because you don't think you can catch up with all the stuff coming at you, then this is one way that you can solve that. I solved it for me that way, and I would challenge you to lean into it. Couple tiny tweaks. What are the tiny tweaks that you're going to take today that will help you get what you want most?
All right, awesome. Thank you, Matt. We'll catch you later.
Yes, sir. See you, brother.
I don't know about you, but Thinking Time is a concept that I am going to go implement like stat. Maybe tonight, tomorrow morning, I am going to start that and implement it in my life, because on what Matt taught us about this, I think it's something that could make such a huge difference in changing the way we operate. It's not going to happen overnight, but once we start putting our thoughts and our ideas down on paper, that big question that Matt talked about, and just continuously writing on it, letting that knowledge flow from our brain through the tip of the pen, then we have a basis to take action. If you like what we're sharing with you, feel free to leave a review. We'd greatly appreciate it. And if you have questions, reach out to us. We are here to support you. Support@millionaireuniversity.com. We want to hear from you. We are here to help you grow that business and take your life and your status to the next level. So, that being said, we are done here. I'm signing off. This has been Professor Gearin with Millionaire University. We will catch you on the next episode.